Hey everybody, it's Irene with Brainstorm Acres, and today we're going to talk about controlling insects. Now this is part 2 of the promised sessions on how you control insects in your garden. And in the first session, I talked about physically controlling insects by doing things like squishing them and stuff like that. And when I was getting ready to do this today, I was trying to figure out how I could explain to people what my mental process is when I have to go to the big guns, something more than just squishing with my fingers or removing a leaf on a plant. And I realized I actually have 2 processes, maybe 3, but basically what it comes down to is because I've done this before, first of all, I know what most of the bugs are. So I may instantly know that if I have, for instance, tomato hornworms, I'm just going to use BT. If it's gotten to the point where I don't want to pick them anymore, or they're just out of control, I can't see them all, whatever it is. There is a process, a mental process involved that could be particularly important if you're kind of new to this. The first thing you have to look at is, are we going to do a physical type of control or a chemical type of control? Now, there are certain things, and this applies more to fruit trees than it does to veggies, that a simple physical control is enough to make a huge dent. For instance, if I have an orchard, one of the best things I could possibly do for that orchard is get what they call a dormant oil spray. The reason they call it a dormant oil spray is it is an oil that is approved for application on plants, and it's a veggie oil usually, and it is sprayed on when the plant is dormant. So what you're doing is you've got bugs that have laid eggs on a plant, in this case a tree, and well, for us it's usually January, but sometimes it can be as late as February. You have to watch, you have to pay attention. You can't have any bud swell on your plants when you're doing this. And it's really hard in areas where the plants don't go dormant. I don't honestly know what you do there. You must have to use some other kind of control. But in most of the United States, the trees go dormant for some period during the winter. And during that time frame, you can spray oil, agricultural oil. And what that does is it literally suffocates the eggs. There's no way that they can ever become acclimated to that. The eggs require the ability to transmit oxygen and back and forth between the atmosphere and inside the egg, and without that, they suffocate. So it's a very simple process. When people tell me, oh, I want to do my orchard all natural, but I'm having all these problems with it, I'm like, well, do a dormant oil spray first, and then see what happens. Because if you spray when your plants are dormant, it's just a coating on the outside of that bug egg, and it literally suffocates it. It doesn't get into the plant, it doesn't transmit to the fruit, none of that sort of stuff. Super simple, super easy. You do it when you know it's not going to rain or precipitate in any other way for a few days, and you're done. I used to spray once every February. If I felt that I had gotten a rain too quickly afterwards, I might spray a second time, but I always made sure my plants were still dormant. Now, in our garden situation, we rarely have a plant that's tough enough to be able to do that with. But you can still have chemical versus physical sort of things. So, for instance, Safer. This is my stash here. I don't have some of the stuff that's used in the orchard, but Safer is an insecticidal soap. It has fancy words associated. It says potassium salts of fatty acids. Read that as soap. All you're doing with this is you're getting in there and washing the bugs off. You might also be hoping to actually suffocate them. Most bugs breathe through insects, through holes in the side of their carapace. That means they're crusty little shells. They breathe through their sides. So if you clog those side holes up, they suffocate. Simple. It's a physical thing. It's no different than somebody holding your head underwater. You cannot change your physiology sufficiently fast to be able to breathe underwater, and you're going to die. So that's exactly what the physical things are, like that. If I put an oil spray like neem or any of the other ones on there, it's a combination. And that's where it gets a little complicated, and it's both a chemical and a physical thing. Anytime you add oil to a basic compound, you are creating something that will last longer and that will have the opportunity to potentially smother bugs just with a physical process. And they can't adapt to that. That's just like saying, well, you could stop breathing air. Well, no, they need to breathe air too. So you can't adapt to that. What other kind of physical things could you do? You could use diatomaceous earth. Do I even own diatomaceous earth? I may have a package of it in the studio, in the garden section. I don't use diatomaceous earth very much because the kinds of things that they're good for don't usually live here. Snails and slugs. Some people have had good results with that because diatomaceous earth is simply made out of diatoms. Diatoms are little prehistoric critters. They still live in the ocean, but they lived in there a bazillion years ago. They're the little fossils. They fall down. It's the skeletons, basically. They fall down to the bottom. They're harvested, and it's basically a white powder. You should not breathe it. So when people tell me, oh, well, diatomaceous earth is the only thing I will use because it is safe. Not if you breathe it, it isn't. So whatever you're using, whether it's aspirin, Tylenol, or anything else, you need to be reading the instructions. Most of these things, I've gotten a scribble on the top here. For instance, this is by BT, and it says 2 teaspoons. And that means in my little sprayer, I put 2 teaspoons of that. Okay, if I was going to upscale to a bigger sprayer, I'd need to read the instructions. These things all come with some sort of fancy little annoying book on the back, which you can open, and it'll have extensive pages and all that kind of stuff. Read it. That's what I have to say, is read it. I can't help people if they're not willing to read and learn a few things at least. I really can't. You have to be responsible. Well, I'm asking you, be responsible. This is not hard. Say I have a bug in my garden. I don't know what it is. So this is the big first question I'm going to ask myself. Soft or hard? Is the outside of the bug soft, or is the outside of the bug hard? Say it's a chewing insect and it's soft. So it's some sort of a caterpillar or squishy nymph sort of phase. If you know your bugs, something like a cucumber beetle larva is a squishy thing. It looks like a little fat worm. Nasty things. But if it's got a soft outside, there are lots of what I would call low impact chemicals that will work great on them. If it's got a hard, like a beetle sort of an outside, you may have to go with something a little sturdier. So what are we looking at? I got a couple of guides here. I just grabbed them off the internet just to see what kind of things I could find easy. I went to the 2 companies that I buy seeds and insecticides and fertilizers and things like that from, most commonly. That's Johnny's Selected Seeds in Maine and Hoss Tools in Georgia. And they both have insecticide comparison charts. Now, the vast majority, I don't think that Johnny's carries anything that's not organic. Now, it'll say OMRI, O-M-R-I. That means it's an organic product, and it's approved for organic farming. So if you get something in the grocery store that's labeled organic, usually for 2 or 3 times what regular products would cost you. If they used insecticide at all, they had to follow the OMRI rules. They had to use an OMRI-approved insecticide, and they had to use it in the manner in which it is required to be used. So if I were to read some of these things, some of these things would say can be used up to day of harvest. Some will say may only be used this many times during a season on a plant. Other things will say stop using it 2 or 3 days before harvest. It depends on the item. And it's pretty obvious. They make it really easy. Yeah, there's a lot of small print and stuff, but a lot of that small print has nothing to do with you. Just follow the instructions. But these charts are an easy way, if you're using their products, to know which product to use. Because sometimes if you're new at this, or if you have a bug that you've never had before, you're not really kind of sure where to start. And there is some overlap between these two because Johnny sells some of the Monterey Garden sprays. Most of what I have here is Monterey. I find them to be a reliable company. They're certainly not the only company out there. There's plenty of other reliable companies. Haas sells pretty much all the Montereys. Not everything that Monterey sells is organic. So I look for that because I do want to stay with the organics. There are some, and I'll go into that later, but there are some knockoffs, chemical knockoffs of some of the organics that I'm personally not comfortable with. And maybe it's just because I don't understand it, but I think it's because I read it and showed it to Henry and neither of us were comfortable with it. So, you know, Johnny's list includes some of the safer stuff. It includes the Monterey Garden insect spray and all that kind of stuff, but these all break down, and Haas Tools has the same sort of things. You have your chart. Oh, I'm having trouble with cutworms. Okay, what should I use? You run across, find the X's, and it says use either Sluggo, which is a slug bait thing, or neem oil. Okay. What are they recommending here for it? Let's see, do they have cutworms on here? Yes, they have cutworms on here. They've got a lot of abbreviations on here too. Woo! Preferred. Okay, their P is a preferred. So they're saying that they like Dipel best. That's their very favorite, and I agree with them. I've used Dipel before. It's just a form of BT. So I'm throwing out these words. I'm saying spinosad, neem, pyrethrins, BT. What's all that mean? Okay, there's the list. These are all natural products that are derived from something in nature. And I've mentioned before the fact that natural doesn't mean anything. But in this case, it kind of does. Natural, is everything natural safe? I don't know. Is mercury safe? Is lead safe? You want to go out and kill yourself? Go eat a digitalis plant. I mean a foxglove plant. It's where digitalis, which is a drug, a heart medication, comes from. There's lots of stuff out there that's natural, that's not safe. Aspirin is a derivative from willow bark. If you eat too much aspirin, you can hemorrhage to death. Okay? That's why there's rules. That being said, these 4 categories are what most of the OMRI approved, the organic approved insecticides use. And they may use these, they may use them in combination with other things. So for instance, this one, which I picked up at ye olde big box store, it's a Miracle-Gro product, and it's called Nature's Care Garden Insect Control. It uses pyrethrin and canola oil. So what this is doing what we were talking about before, which is using an oil which might suffocate some of the bugs. It'll also make the stuff stick to the plant better. And it's combining that with a pyrethrin. Now, pyrethrins, and you'll see pyrethrin, pyrethroid. If you're sticking with the organic stuff, what you're getting is something that is derived from the root of chrysanthemums. Okay? And it's been around for a long time. It does not mean that it cannot do damage. It can. It certainly can kill pollinators. It is actually used when you need to, for instance, say you have an invasive species in a lake. And when I say invasive species, I mean an amphibian or a fish in a lake, and you need to kill all the fish in that lake. pyrethrin is what you use because it is one of the least toxic things for the environment. It will degrade. And the ability to degrade is one of the big things that goes with all of these categories. Somebody asked me the other day, if I could ban one insecticide, what would I ban? The answer is 7. Very simple. I looked up 7 today just out of pure curiosity to see what they had to say. And the first thing the company that makes it says is controls bugs for up to 3 months. Really? I don't care how carefully you use that. You're going to kill something you didn't mean to. So 3 months? No. 7 is one of the main reasons that we have pollinator problems in the United States. Because people get out there, they spray everything, and it hangs around, yes, for up to 3 months. Now, if I use spinosad or neem or pyrethrins or BT or one of those other things, it might be good for 24 hours, 48. And after that, it's going to decompose. I mean, it's just going to literally, the molecules are going to disassociate and it'll be broken down by the sun and the wind and everything else, and it'll just go back to nature as non-toxic compounds. I like to create as little impact in my garden as I can. Spinosad, one of my very favorites. I just threw it on the front of the list because it came to mind. I like the word. It sounds fun. It was located originally at a brewery, not just a regular brewery. It was actually, I think it was a rum place down in the Caribbean or something like that. Yeah, it's a natural product. And there's 2 kinds, there's spinosyn A and spinosyn B, and spinosad is those 2 combined. 0.5% of this entire bottle, and this is a quart, is that stuff. And the rest is basically something to carry it around on. But I use 2 tablespoons of this in a half gallon of water when I'm spraying. Man, it works like, wow, just amazing. It's good for all kinds of caterpillars and thrips and leaf miners, things that are hard like thrips to get rid of. This stuff will really knock them down. Really knock them down. Neem weighs the same way. You know, 2 tablespoons of this, again, in a half gallon of water, and it hangs around. Neem has the additional benefit of also being a fungicide. So, for instance, if I've got some thrips in the greenhouse and I need to kind of knock them down, and geez, I'm not sure what that other thing is, and I might have a little fungus starting up in there, this is a perfect solution. Now, if I'm spraying in the garden, say I'm out there and I notice that the cucumber beetles have created this wonderful disaster in my husk cherries, which they have right now. I actually need to spray again tonight. They have these nasty little caterpillary sort of things that are big and fat and gross, and they they eat the leaves and poo them out all over the place, and it's just this gross combination of squishy caterpillars and poo. If I want to spray for those during the day, say I know that I'm not going to be around after dark, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this. I got to do something now because they're doing damage by the minute. BT. Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacillus. It's a bacteria. And you spray it on the leaves, and anything that eats that leaf, whether it's a tomato hornworm or a squishy cucumber beetle thing, or any other kind of critter that eats that leaf, is going to ingest the bacillus. It's going to get into the insect's gut. It's going to make them go sort of lethargic, and they'll be dead within 24 hours. And this stuff will just plain go away. No residual effects. I try not to spray anything that's leafy, like I'm going to be eating the leaves of it, with much besides this, because I'm not concerned at all about this.